Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Berto Wills, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We're going to have a great show for you today. In fact, we have several things to go, so we are going to kind of get busy today. Michael Rudnin, AVQ. Bruce Ballard, welcome aboard to Politics Done Right. I hope everybody's doing fine. We are here ready to get busy. Anyhow, what is the program going to be about today? Let's start talking about it. You want to do that? Let's do that. Anyhow, the program today is titled Indy Journalist Caban on Gentrification. Steve Schmidt and Colin Powell. Yay, audio is in sync. Let's hope after the video it remains in sync. Remember, folks, we are using professional audio video programming software that somehow, sometimes don't do right. So we'll see. You guys keep me informed. I thank you so kindly. Wesley Wyan. Hey, the video matches the audio today. Let's hope it keeps that. It has a tendency to do that till we do some MPEGs or AV4s or that sort of a thing. So we'll try to see if that goes on just fine, but you guys keep me posted. Anyhow, subtitle of the show today, Steve Schmidt and Colin Powell made it clear the failures of the president. Indy Journalist Robby Caban shows the implications of gentrification by example. I like that, Bruce. Professional, BioWare. And Lauren Sim says, keep it 100. We'll see. We'll see. Out of my control. Caban does not just report from the office. She goes where few are willing to go. Robby Caban starts the report at the takedown of the Rayshard Brooks Memorial. She then uses the experience of many out there to make the case about gentrification. After we do that, we're going to head into several important videos, both of some commentary from Steve Schmidt on MSNBC, commentary from Colin Powell on MSNBC, and good old Presidente, Vice President, had some words to say. We are going to talk about what he had to say on Donald Trump and the pandemic. I think it is rather important, and I think you guys are going to like it. But let's go ahead and get busy with Robby. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. We have a great show today. Robby L. Caban is with us today. Everybody has heard about the murder of Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta, but they haven't heard the full story. And as usual, Robby is always out there, and it's interesting that I think, Robby, you said this occurred about 5 minutes away from where you live. So tell me a little bit about the area, first of all, before we kind of get into the details of what's going on here.
Sure. As always, Egberto, thank you for being independent and covering this in an impartial way. That hasn't happened so far, and it's really causing a lot more problems. Mr. Brooks, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Mr. Brooks was shot in the back by the Atlanta Police Department while he was running. And this happened in southeast Atlanta under I-20 on the south side. I live in that area. Below 20 is our interstate, the dividing line. And typically, like South Chicago, South Bronx, the South Side always has the divestment, larger populations of people of color and lower income. And due to the city's growth and really the East Coast and the West Coast becoming unaffordable, people have been moving to Atlanta via our airport, since we have a global international airport, a hub, and our values are increasing and our residents are getting displaced, specifically in the South Side, where there's more opportunity because it's less expensive due to the divestment. Therefore, our newer residents have demanded, because they're of higher income, lobbied City Hall, used our civic engagement systems, which are not run equitably, to have more enforcement, and it has resulted in over-policing and now multiple deaths that have been really ongoing for quite some time. Rayshard Brooks is not the first case. Oscar Kane was murdered. There's been no justice for him. We could name off a ton of names. A lot of people feel like it's being handled. Rayshard's case is being handled the way it is because of political, just the spotlight on Atlanta and our mayor, who may be a Joe Biden VP contender.
Now, you know what is so interesting is before we further get into this, there's a video that you made yesterday that really made me call you right away, and that is many times the stories aren't told. Stories that aren't told correctly by reporters, they have other reasons for telling the story in a particular way in which they do it. And you actually got a chance to talk to one of the reporters covering the story. So what I want to do here is I want to play that, let folks hear that confrontation, and then we'll take it on the other side.
What? It just seems like your media is always kind of slanted. It does. Yeah. I mean, did you cover that they had produce and water and showers and shelters?
Well, I never covered any of this, so my news coverage can't be slanted.
So you're here for the after. So you didn't cover when it was positive. You're just here now that it's negative.
Do you understand how media works? I mean, it doesn't, because I'm here now, because I wasn't here then, that means that something's wrong.
Well, it does sound slanted. Like it's because you didn't cover the first part, so you're only covering the second part.
I was covering something else.
So
now the people who cover this, they're on vacation or something, and so now I have to come.
No, I'm just asking.
I'm slanted because I didn't cover the whole thing.
Well, I follow you. I follow you a lot, and I see people who are very elite, very wealthy, who are demanding enforcement tag you a lot. No, I see people. I didn't say you. I have no idea how wealthy you are. But I see people who are very elite, very wealthy, with influence tagging you all the time. Yeah. And then I see sometimes when you post, you know, the narrative is, you know, it doesn't seem balanced. Like your station covered when they were delivering or providing free produce and barbecuing and positivity and music and info sessions that happen. What station are you with?
I'm at Channel 2.
Channel 2. I'm going to look on Channel 2 and see. Well, that's what you said, right? That they covered the positive before, but it was somebody else.
I know they covered this whole issue. They've been covering the issue. I've been.
But how did they cover it? Because see, I haven't seen anybody showcasing.
How do you know it's slanted?
Because I've seen the negative part covered, not the positive part. I came down here to see for myself. I literally saw people claiming it was.
Would you not agree that once people start dying out here, the positive isn't as? I mean, you can.
Well, people have been dying out here. Somebody died. That's why they did that, right? Rashard Brooks died by people who were sworn to protect.
Died, so
right, and what happened with that? Do you know? Because it's an ongoing investigation, right?
Yeah.
So what do you know what happened with that?
I know a girl was killed.
Did you know that the shots were fired out of that car where they didn't see the little girl in the back seat before?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? No.
Does that make it better?
Not at all. But it's certainly not like somebody purposely tried to kill a little girl. They were being fired at. Didn't know there was a little girl in the back. When people fire at you, do you fire?
No,
do you defend yourself?
Part, they here in this busy area of town, people are firing.
You okay? Hi.
You don't have any narrative about that. It's just like, oh, let that happen.
Well, you're not asking me. That's not a question. You're making a statement.
No.
So you don't have any narrative. That's not a question. What's your question? No problem. Nice to meet you, sir. That's one of our lovely media reporters, Tom Jones.
Okay, Robby, I thought that wasn't really confrontational. What that was is getting to the point. In other words, you guys are always here when it's time to report the negative. What about tell me a little about that.
Well, I saw him, you know, with his microphone and in the air, and he was in a suit, so he really stuck out. And I have actually seen him online. There's a very affluent local group out of Buckhead, which is one of our most expensive neighborhoods. They pay the most taxes. It's where some of the looting, rioting has occurred. And they are about 6,000 deep in this private group, and our elected officials really respond to them. Our elected officials are tagged in this group, and they actually respond when they're tagged. City council. And I also see the same affluent residents in Buckhead in this group that I got kicked out of, always tagging Tom Jones, who works for Channel 2. And so when I saw that, I clicked and, you know, saw how he was reporting. And, you know, Mr. Jones is an African-American male. So it carries weight. You know, I've seen this narrative over and over and over, the tagging or the use of images to justify an agenda. And he just seems to willingly, you know, roll in this problematic agenda. And when I saw him on site, I said, you know what? Because this was, of course, after multiple tragedies had occurred outside of the site. I saw no coverage whatsoever of the positive things occurring at the Rayshard Brooks Memorial, which were numerous, but all I saw was all this horrible negative coverage and reporting. And then all of a sudden, when it's being cleared out, and it's again, just the focus is negative, there he is. And so I saw him, and I saw also at the same time a homeless man, and we had just, or multiple homeless people. There were police everywhere, City of Atlanta trucks everywhere. They had taken down the everything that these activists and advocates and community members had tried to do in a positive way. And I put it on a live, but I didn't point it at him because I didn't want him to not engage me. And then I just asked, I just said so. I said, you heard the video. I said, it just seems like you're slanted. And he got upset with me actually and kind of cut me off, which made me a bit upset.
But he said a phrase that was memorable. What was that?
I think he said, don't you know how media works?
Exactly.
And
that was telling.
I was surprised he said that myself. But what really was disturbing was that because of all the negative coverage, right? The biased coverage, the unfair coverage, I actually went down to the site myself, like multiple times. And every single time I went down there to try to, take photos and show people, no, this is not what's happening, because I didn't believe it. I didn't believe what people were claiming. And then as soon as I got down there, I had confirmation I was welcomed in. Yes, I will say people were armed. It's true. People were armed. But this was a lawful occupation because the Wendy's, who I believe is a franchise, the owners of the Wendy's allowed the community members and advocates to occupy the space with a verbal agreement as long as they didn't allow people in the burnt building. They allowed the memorial site. They allowed the murals. They allowed what was ongoing. And what was ongoing was building tent structures for our homeless.
We're showing some of that as you speak.
Building a community garden, passing out healthy food, greens, water, music, books. People were presenting on people's rights and how to organize and advocate. People were playing cards. It just, all kinds of different people visited. And somehow, Mr. Jones and Channel 2 never shared that. All anybody in Buckhead or anyone saw was Atlanta has gone crazy. It's lawlessness everywhere. It's so horrible. And, they basically capitalized on the violence outside of the memorial, in my opinion, to use that as an excuse to go and take down everything at the memorial. And that's ultimately what happened.
Robby, I'm glad, first of all, that as an independent journalist, you went out and did that. Because even, as you said, the reporters from Channel 2 and all these other reporters, the producers, you can't completely blame it on, I think his name is Tom Jones. You can't completely blame it on him. He has something called a producer. And these producers generally don't look like the community. They are not of the community, and they have an agenda generally to support those people of the higher echelon. You're well aware of these groups that you've spoken to me about, these private groups that are part of the gentrification process or the members of the gentrification process in Atlanta. So, and I think you've mentioned as well that you found several of those, not only political officials, but media officials in those secret groups communicating among each other. So in other words, there's a special group, likely by class, where race is just a thing that's used as a tool when necessary.
Well, groups, plural, because
groups,
they're rampant. Yes. And it's very problematic that our City of Atlanta Planning Department allows our civic engagement structure to operate this way. Because, and I covered this at the request of people affiliated with the advocates. I got a call the morning of that, and that they're tearing down the site, APD's there, everything's coming down. And I was like, how can I help? They know I'm local, they know I'm right there. And they said, please go cover it. Please take photos, please video whatever you can. Because I guess they wanted to document it. And so that's what I did. And sure enough, the advocates were there. I was afraid to video their faces because people are being arrested and targeted from these videos. So, it's just a very convoluted matter. And I want to clarify something. Recently, there were 2 incidents that were outside of the memorial site. The latest one recently, our Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, actually is in an article saying enough is enough, and she justifies the tearing down of the occupation, lawful occupation, because of this death, of the little girl, which no one will say is, everyone agrees that that's horrible. But just to be clear, and there's been a memo released, a public release statement with the family of Richard, as well as the people supporting these efforts, saying the people who were at the memorial had nothing to do with the death of that little girl. And, one might even, at least when I was there on site, the memorial was on the Wendy's property, right, where murals were occurring, arts and more. And there was an entry point to get in and out. And so at this time, APD, Atlanta Police, would not even come to this area, right? And so how were people going to direct traffic safely? So cones were put up and/or a barricade in the street to direct in and out. Now, had we not had APD, Atlanta Police Department, calling in with the blue flu, that's what it's called. I believe there's an article out that 50% of officers called in after the murder of Rayshard Brooks, and the discipline that occurred, which is an important factor. Perhaps had they collaborated with the lawful occupiers who had permission and directed traffic, this could have been avoided. And you'll see activists on my page, which is public, activists like Eva Dickerson, who's a beautiful, intelligent woman, Spelman grad, local activist, and she's emotional in it, saying, this. I'll share the video with you. It's
right now, and they just cleared everything out. Helicopters, all of the stuff broke down. So on Saturday for the 4th, we built houses, we built showers, we had 2 garden beds in our community garden.
Are you okay with this?
And all kinds of other things. So we had a beautiful event. This was meant to be a peaceful place, and they tore down all the houses. They broke Rashard's altar. His wife had put special crystals for him on the altar. They just tore it all down. They messed up the mural. They tore the garden beds up. I mean, this is supposed to be a peaceful place in Rashard's memory, and they destroyed everything.
Were people armed because they were trying to protect the people who were visiting and themselves? I heard that there were drive-bys attacking, and this place was being under threat by the KKK. Can you verify?
This place has been targeted by the KKK and white supremacists over and over again. And what happened, I mean, we don't know what happened, and that's something that we're going to figure out as a community, but this is not the way to do it. Like, this is not community care. And, yeah, Eva, do you want to say anything?
Annie! Oh, I was just cheering you on.
Eva, do you want to give a perspective from please, Eva, tell the real story.
Yeah.
Ready.
We live in 2 Atlantas. There's the Atlanta that builds gardens around the city, that educates children when they need it, that shows up in the middle of crisis, that builds altars and gardens across the city. And then there's Keisha Lance Bottoms Atlanta that destroys all of that allows APD to bust up in old ladies' homes and kill them. That allows APD to get away with killing a man who's trying to make it to his daughter's birthday party. That allows the conditions to exist where an 8-year-old girl can get killed at a peaceful community celebration. Keisha,
Say it,
blood
Eva.
is on your hands. You did this. You killed that 8-year-old Keisha Bottoms. People in this community have been begging. Joyce Shepard, Carla Smith, the whole Zone 3 community has been begging their representatives for infrastructure, community care,
She's right.
healthcare,
It's true.
investment in
It's
the
all
local
true.
food system. Nothing has happened except for gentrification and the belt line. The only thing y'all have brought to this community is construction stuff. That's it. That's it. It's the war.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Annie. Everything she just said, I can co-sign to. I've lived here over 10 years, and it's 1,000% true.
Robby, that's why we need you out there and the independent journalists, because, these are the portions of stories that are never told. Most of what we hear on mainstream media is an agenda. And in your case, I think you've made it clear in several instances The agenda is gentrification to enrich a few, both politicians and otherwise. And I think that is why this work is so important. So, Robby, tell me a little bit more about, before we close this out, tell me, what do you want to get out of this entire thing? Because, I mean, it's profound.
Well, I mean, I believe in transparency, and I don't think that meaningful change can occur without just letting it all out, so to speak. So I really just wanted to support the efforts of people who are doing good work, who are doing commendable work, who I think are on the right track. These activists and advocates and community members, this is, you know, they're a community. I'm also a resident, and our planning should be inclusive and should follow what the community collective wants, not a small group who are affluent, who are controlling a city engagement structure that needs to be reformed.
And isn't it true, Robby, that that not being the case is one of the reasons we have the poverty, we have the desolation, and we have the people without hope in that community?
1,000%, Egberto. I have no doubt in my mind. I'm so glad you brought that up, because there is a direct correlation to the lack of economic development, the lack of resources, the lack of holistic economic development, the lack of resources to local legacy residents, and the quality of life that people are having to deal with, right? And there's an irony and a hypocrisy and a heartbreak, because the local long-term residents of Southwest Atlanta who qualify as low income are actually the residents who afforded the federal funding that created the Atlanta Beltline, that the Beltline was built off of. And so if you think about it, it's actually a cruel way to handle people, right? Because you take resources that were intended for them, and the consequences, their displacement, right? The loss of their home, predatory tax liens, you know, the evictions, the foreclosures, the loss of generational wealth, the displacement farther south, the heavier policing and enforcement and arresting people. I saw, you know, it's interesting, Alberto. I'm going to do this real quick because I know we're closing up, but I saw, I read this. I'm going to send you this. It says, it's from First Nations on Decolonize Myself. It says, colonizers using the argument natives were already at war with each other as an excuse for genocide is like someone saying, I was driving through a neighborhood yesterday and saw two neighbors arguing, so I killed them both and moved my friends and family into their houses. When I saw this, I immediately just took out the word colonizers and thought of gentrifiers. Gentrifiers using the argument that legacy residents were already at war with each other, black on black, killing each other, crime, as an excuse for excessive policing, over policing instead of genocide, is like someone saying, I was driving through a neighborhood yesterday and saw two neighbors arguing, so I jailed them both with cash bail so they can't get out, and moved my friends and family into their houses. Actually, I bought their grandmother's house with a predatory tax loan and on the Fulton County foreclosure steps. And then I think I'm gonna come here and live here and be fine. And then they get a rude awakening when their house is broken into and they're appalled.
That is a good little snippet you sent me from Facebook of this woman who just got robbed. And it's like, oh, what a welcome into this community.
She's appalled. And this, let me tell you, those are up all the time. Next door is inundated with them. Buckhead is so upset they can't shop. They're so upset about their looting and so on. And these are, these are bubble people. And when your bubble gets burst, you're appalled, but you are on these forums making fun of our legacy residents' poverty, complaining that there's litter, complaining that poor people are pushing toilets through the streets. Do you know the embarrassment it must be to go around begging to cut yards when you're a grown adult male? You know, and instead we've been harassing our water boys. They call them the water boys. They sell water on the expressways because of the lack of resources. And instead we complain about their litter, they're aggressive. Mike, can we not build them a stand? Can we not put a trash can out there? Like, is that too much?
Robbie, like I said, that is the reason why we need the independent journalists, because you've looked at a problem that the other journalists look at the problem and say, why are they doing this? You're looking at them, you're looking at the same problem and saying, what has society done? What has our structure done to allow or create what we see here now? Robbie, give me a closing statement.
I don't know that I answered you. You asked what I want to see happen. I definitely want the whole needs of the community met. I will say that this is solvable. You know, the community has stepped up. There's an upcoming event with community movement builders. I believe it's on the 11th in the afternoon. I'm going to put up that flyer.
I'll post it here too.
Thank you. It's a march for Rayshard Brooks, and I'm sure there are going to be multiple organizations, and people want to see community resource centers. I would love to see like a whole satellite collection of them. And I know that the sustainability of the Southwest side and the South side and our quadrant is possible, alleviating crime, alleviating higher taxes on some of the other parts of the city that are subsidizing us by the development of a major barren parkway called Metropolitan Parkway. We can create large-scale job creation, a component of affordable housing, and a transit hub to sustain the South Side. We've been advocating to Mayor Bottoms for over 6 months. She promised a meeting. We're trying to give it to her, and now I heard she has COVID, so I'm not even sure what'll happen.
Robby L. Caban, not your average agent, independent journalist, and activist. Thank you so kindly for having been here, and thank you for what you go out there and do over and over again, many times at your own peril. Muchas gracias. Okay, folks, I hope you like that. Now, I want to answer, before I go into the other videos, I want to answer some questions specifically from Brother Pollard, as far as, is gentrification always bad? You know, in the eyes of middle-class people, in the eyes of somebody who wants to go into several areas of, let's say, Houston or Atlanta that were depraved, they got so bad that we brought some money in from the capitalists to build it back up, it's fine, right? To us, it's fine. And why is it fine? We have new places to go to. We have new stores. We have new cafes. We have new bakeries, all of that. And these old buildings are rebuilt. The question is, the only purpose of gentrification is to use private money to get something on the cheap, to rebuild it and to create a better looking thing, a more vibrant area. But in the process, if the people who lived there could not have ever afforded said gentrification, and they're paid at below market values, which is the whole reason gentrification exists. Rich people only go into a place and fix it up if they're going to make a profit out of it. A person who flips homes, that's what they do. They buy on the cheap. Somebody's at the other end of that transaction that's losing, right? That is why when the market crashes, when we have people that, when home price values fall, there are a lot of investors whose stock go up because they manipulate, or they don't manipulate, but they benefit off of the pain of others. That is capitalism. In a capitalist sense, gentrification is great. I think in a human sense, gentrification, it's not possible for gentrification to be good. The only thing that should be happening in those places that are gentrified is our collective dollars, tax dollars, be invested in those areas to bring them up to par. Not from private institutions to go in there, because their whole thing from a private institution is to get a profit out of the deal. So in my opinion, Brother Pollard, gentrification, while it looks nice, I mean, I've gone and eaten in gentrified restaurants and gentrified cafes, and I do what most of us do at some time, become hypocritical to what we preach. But when we look at the science behind it, when we look at the economics behind it, when we look at the reasons behind it, Gentrification is all wrong. And the people that suffer and lose are the originals. And I think I saw a message from Christina Park. And it says, gentrification, she says, let's see what, I think Christine Park says, bad for the people that lose the neighborhood they love. And a lot of times these are neighborhoods that go into disrepair because, again, the socioeconomic value of the community changes. There is no investment in the communities. And many times this occur on purpose. I can tell you even back in Colon, I am from Panama, Central America. What the government does out there is it goes ahead and it lets the place go to hell because they know 10, 15, 20 years later, investors are coming in to buy those things on the cheap. And Colon, it's a province I'm from in Panama. Caribbean Sea, beautiful beaches, beautiful everything. The city of Colon has turned to crap. They're trying to move all the people, force all the people by it being so bad, force all the people to go inland, go inland, go inland. Why do you think they want that? They want that because they're then going to bring corporations in there to clean it all up and turn it into beachfront property for the good ones. Same thing happened in Panama City, but they did a smarter move. We have the Panama Canal, which has a lot of dredging. They can't move the people who are costeños, who have always been on the coast. So you know what they did? They moved the damn coast. All right, you're not going to move from the coast? We'll move the coast. So they dump all the land up in front of the coast. And now you have luxury buildings several blocks into the ocean that's now beachfront property. Folks, that is what capitalism does. It always looks for the next piece of dinner. It always looks for more food. And you are always the food. And when they run out of getting, what I try to tell people about you are being eaten next. I tell my white brothers and sisters, right? The reason for creating racism and all of that, right, is because as long as the people being taken advantage, it looks like there's a delineation between the people being taken advantage. In other words, average white American citizens can look and see, well, the people that are going to be taken advantage of, there's a delineation. It's going to be black people, it's going to be indigenous people, it's going to be Latino-looking people. When I say Latino-looking people, I mean the mixed indigenous. It's just not going to be white. So at least we have a reprieve. So there's not much reason for us to look at real systemic changes because that's just human nature. We don't see it affecting us. We don't have that close alienation with it. And then, of course, the media keeps Appalachia out of your face. You don't see Appalachia. You don't see the distrodden in Appalachia, how bad they're living. Like my daughter went out there and she saw it and my daughter said, "Oh, Dad, I didn't know people lived like that." They didn't look like what we thought, poor people. The distrodden, they didn't look like any of that. And we don't see it on TV often, right? Because out of sight, out of mind. So we give America that false sense of security, that false sense of who we are. But eventually capitalism, again, it's not a sustainable system. So it has to come eaten. It needs food. It needs food. It needs to be supported. After we've done gentrifying all those black areas, after we've done gentrifying all those Mexican areas that are able to be gentrified, where we can get value and extract value out of, guess who's next? You are. And that is what a lot of America is finding out. And then we get a Donald Trump who spins it as if the fault of all this occurring is those other people. So while you're still with that bone in your head from what you've been taught all of your life, believe in that. You start to blame everybody else. But you know what's great with Gen Z? What's great with Gen Y? Gen Zs are the ones with those big college debts. They're the ones that can't get an employment at a livable wage. They are seeing it because capitalism is eating us all. Capitalism is eating. It needs to be fed. It needs to be fed. So they're feeding, and these people are seeing it. So now they realize we all are allies. So you see all the protesting around the country, and the protest finally looks like the melting pot that America has always been preached to be. So we got that melting pot protesting. So the government gets scared now. Oh, we got to start making superficial changes. Those statues are coming down. Even in Mississippi, the statues are down. We have to show that we are making some progress. Even in Alabama, the statues are down. Cosmetic. But you know what? Better than statues being down, we need statutes being down. We need statutes to help us all. The other day I used the term, the depression will not be televised. There are 40 million Americans or more out of jobs right now. There are lines all over San Antonio and Houston and everywhere full with people seeking food more than ever before because they cannot afford it. In the next month, the eviction letters are going to be going out for thousands and millions of Americans. But will that be televised? Likely not as much as it should, because the system cannot allow you to see what suffering is going to start to look like. The suffering on TV is no longer going to look like the people that are expected to be suffering. It's suddenly going to look like you. Like my broader audience. I love you, brothers and sisters, but you are going to start seeing what we together all are going to have to fight for. Because it has changed. And COVID-19 actually is a savior for the government, right? Because the government can start saying, as opposed to it being necessarily systemic, we can actually say, guess what? COVID-19 is at fault, and we will institute programs to cover what COVID-19 has destroyed. But it's not COVID-19. It's the systemic nature of our economic system come into fruition, that it ran out of food. And where it could have racialized its necessity for food, it no longer can, because it needs more. That is why if you look, economist Richard Wolff talks about the debt curve. In other words, we never got increases in wages. But what we got a lot of is increases in credit. And the magical thing with credit is you own nothing. So Americans got the semblance of prosperity for a long time from credit given to people who eventually take it all from you. And that is the life that we have. And that is a life that we ought to mitigate. Right now, with 40 million people out of jobs, yes, what we should be doing is creating money. Modern monetary theory. What we should be doing is going ahead and making people whole. Reinvigorating an economy, reconstituting an economy. After all, an economy is man-made. Right now, it is biased to those who created it and built it into the system. Why is it that the engineer who creates the products is underpaid? In Marxism, they call that the excess labor goes over to the spoils, the profit of those who do not work but who own the capital. These are simple tenets that when we explain to people, is very, very easily understood. The reason we don't teach these things is because people start asking questions. When Americans start asking, how comes in a pandemic, from the inception of the pandemic, how can Steve Bezos suddenly double his wealth from $100 billion to $200 billion when combined with his wife? He entered the pandemic at $100 billion combined wealth. He exits it with $200 billion and growing. How can the stock market continue a net rise when we know what we will be doing is dumping jobs? Because they know dumping jobs mean efficiency maximized at corporations. People are still going to eat. People are still going to buy the necessities. And we have less workers' insurance to pay. We have less worker wages to pay. So, of course, more of that money comes where again? That money then go. No, sir, masticator, that's not it. I'm just versed in economics. You see, I don't define economics as Marxism, MMT, and all of that. I just use the tenets of these different processes to describe what we need to talk about, to show what's wrong in many and in each, because there is no master economic system. What we have to do is start doing things as they work. And for those of you who are attacking me, let's say from listening to this, who is working for somebody, who somebody is making a huge profit off of your excess labor, you have to understand that what you are is complicit in the new form of antiseptic slavery. And if you're okay, at first you could look at the person that was doing a whole lot worse as being what my daughter normally call it, melanin endowed. You could look at the melanin endowed and say, well, those are what the slaves look like, but it's more efficient. Capitalism is a more efficient form of slavery, because if I don't need your labor, I don't have to keep you healthy, I don't have to clothe you, I just let you go. Slavery, I had to keep you healthy, I had to keep your clothes on because I needed to maintain my property. In capitalism, the employee is even worse than property. The only thing is that this property doesn't feel the pain of the whip or the slices of the knife or the slices of the whip. But you're slaves nonetheless. You are slaves nonetheless. But it is important that you understand these tenets. It is important because when you understand these tenets, you can then go to the master, the corporate executive, and say, no, you are going to pay me what I'm worth, else you are not going to make any income either. We are going to normalize wages, else you are not going to profit off of my excess labor. You are not going to get $100 billion while 40 million Americans suffer. You are not going to get $100 billion while our streets are caving, the streets that you use to move the product to us. Remember, they are doing you no favors. A lot of people say, well, if we start to tax the billionaire, they'll do what? They have no choice, because all that is done is through us. We are the ones who make things. We are the ones with the intellect. We are the ones who create. All of you that are listening to my voice, whether you agree with me or not, you are the intellect. You are the labor. You are the ones. You are the creators. Whether you like what I'm saying or not, that is a fact. And to allow others, what I think it's important to know. Let's see, Norman says, it's better to think where you are now sounds a bit like talking down. We are adrift right now. Please explain what the administration current strategy is to grow 40 million new jobs and to cover that debt of people without salary for 3 months. Please explain to me what you mean by talking down. If I tell somebody that explain to me, and then if I need to apologize, I'll be more than happy to do. Anybody who think my statement was a talk down statement, please let me know. I need to know that. If you think that statement that I made was a talk down, please let me know in the comments, and I will be more than happy to modify or strategize or to do things differently. I don't feel that that was the purpose, but if that is the way it's coming across, I need to make that clear. Let's see, Robby Caban, so happy to hear from you again. Thank you, my friend. So again, I need to hear from my listeners. Was that a talk down? Was that a talk down? Norman think it was. Okay, and Norman, as far as please explain what the administration current strategy is to grow 40 million new jobs. There's no strategy to grow 40 million new jobs. Nor do they need to have a particular strategy. They just need to have an equitable economy. Example, if we had Medicare for all, most Americans want to do something. If we had other options, 3 months for the 3 months salary, that is what MMT talks about. MMT talks about increasing the money supply because to meet the demands of the necessities of the people as it is today. That is what MMT talks about. In other words, we give a direct stipend to every single American. And people say, but why are we going to give that stipend to the millionaire as well? Because it is efficient. And because that millionaire may bank that stipend, but the other folks are going to dump it right in. But folks, I got somebody who said the previous narrative was a talk down. I want to know from whoever is listening that may think that's a talk down, please let me know, because it's a narrative I use, and it's a narrative I would need to make or modify. Mike, I don't know your understanding. Okay. So please, I'm waiting for those responses. So while I wait for that response, I want to go ahead and play a video for you. Here's the deal. Colin Powell came on today. Is what should I say? Was pretty important, and I want you to listen to it because he still has stature with many. Let's go ahead and do that. Colin Powell appeared on with Andrea Mitchell today, and you know what? He didn't hold back, and in his soft-spoken kind of way, he kind of gave the rap to Donald Trump. Check it out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Let me ask you about the Confederate flag, because the president was defending the Confederate flag and attacking Bubba Wallace on NASCAR.
I know. I don't know why he does this. Doesn't he have more important things to do? I mean, why is he fooling around with NASCAR and a flag? And if Mississippi wants to change its flag, it's no business of the president. It's called states' rights. It's their flag, not his flag. He should worry about the American flag, and we should devote all his time to the American flag and stop sitting around tweeting people all the time. Get going. Let's go. Come on, Mr. President. You got a few more months to go.
I want to ask you about the pandemic. The president, first of all, has been blaming China, but there was a lot of intelligence that he didn't be following in January and February about the pandemic. And now he's ordering governors to reopen schools when a lot of parents, teachers, and other people who work in the schools are worried about their own safety. It's a tough issue. Where do you stand on that?
We have 13,000 different school districts in the United States. A few of them belong to the government, the military, but most of them are privately run. They belong to those communities. It's not his place to come along and say, you got to do it my way. And then he confuses everything by saying that, well, I'm going to have the CDC change its rules. But the CDC did not change its guidelines or rules. And so there's confusion. And it all happened without any real planning. And so I think what we're going to see is that individual communities that have their own school board will decide what they're going to do with that school system, and they're not waiting for instructions from the White House or from governors who have been ordered by the White House to do something different. The president doesn't have any authority over these various school districts, and he should stop pretending that he does.
And he should stop pretending that he does. Absolutely so. This is a states' rights issue when it comes to schools, and the president has just got to keep out. Now, if he wants to try to hold them hostage to federal dollars, Congress and the Senate will have a say on that. Anyhow, folks, so as it turns out, then right after I saw Colin Powell do that, right, it was like a twofer, Here we come with Steve Schmidt, but Steve Schmidt with words. But I had to cut that one because I thought he hit the money on the head on the nail, or the nail on the head. Oh, I'm kind of doing it. Well, Steve Schmidt is at it again. Listen to what he has to say, and then we'll go ahead and take this on the other side.
Steve Schmidt, start with you. Why are Republicans so on their game to try to make sure? Is it guilt? Is it our feeling that we were somehow complicit in bringing the party and the country to this place?
I think Republicans are part of a coalition that wants to turn Donald Trump out of office because he's the worst president in the history of the country. He's a profound threat to the security of the country, and we have absolutely zero chance. And by zero chance, I mean zero, Z-E-R-O, zero chance of moving past this with Donald Trump in that job. He is completely unfit for it. He is unfit mentally. He is unfit physically. He is unfit intellectually. He is a conspiracy theorist who has the blood of over 100,000 Americans on his hands because of the incompetence and the ineptitude in the response to the coronavirus. The leading math and science country in the world is the epicenter of this, and there's one reason, and that's presidential incompetence. Full stop. Secondly, when you look at the Russian bounties, when you look at his disloyalty and treachery towards the men and women that he's sworn to command as commander-in-chief, the men and women who come from every race and creed, every corner of the country, the American people should not tolerate this. He has assaulted our institutions. He has desecrated his office. He has assailed the constitutional order. He has weakened the checks and balances. He has been a force for illiberalism. We see the rescission of democracy all over the globe. We see his assaults on our allies and the weakening of the American position. And so 4 years in, we stand at a moment of abject American weakness and tragedy that can't end until he's gone. And that's why there's so many groups out there telling the truth on Donald Trump, trying to convince these Republican voters to say, you're fired.
To tell Republican voters, to tell the president, you are fired. Need I say more? The truth of the matter is Donald Trump is likely not going to win. The question is now, can we bring a responsible Senate along with it? One of the groups that Steve Schmidt is associated with has been making some great ads that actually not only put the onus on the president, but also his enablers, those being all those Republican senators up for re-election. Good job, Steve Schmidt, and we expect this to work. I definitely expect it to work, and I think it is actually working. When you look at the polls, it is working perfectly so. The thing about it is, Mike Cisak, I'm sorry, but Steve Schmidt, if you can refute anything that he says, I'm sure you could call and refute it, but you'd be pretty darn wrong. Everything that he says is provable, debatable, or not debatable, that is. Anyway, today, what I liked was the attack by Biden. Biden is really coming into his own right now. Check out what he had to say about the good old Trump, the most incompetent president we've ever had. Check it out.
Our president wasn't prepared for this pandemic. He ignored the detailed briefings and warnings that our administration left behind. The threat of a pandemic we told him was coming. We gave all this to his administration in transition. But he shut it all down. He shut down the pandemic office we had inside the White House. He praised the Chinese government even as the virus was coming to our shores because he was so afraid that they'd walk away from his trade deal that cost us significant amounts of money as well. Let's not get caught flat-footed again.
Let's not get flat-footed again. Okay, down to the screen. Mike Cisak, welcome aboard. Norman Reynolds, welcome aboard. Masticator, AVQ, welcome. Lawrence Sims, Dexter Evans. Let's see, Robert Jansen. Let's see, Christine Park. Who else am I missing here? Rose William. Rose is our editor-in-chief. Let's see, who else do we have here? Bear with me, guys, as I go through the scroll. A lot of messages today. Who else is here? Lee Grant. We also have Robby Caban. Para ver. I saw some others. You know, Bruce Pollard. Who else? Para ver. If you want me to call your name, just drop a quick message in Facebook, but under the facebook.com/Politics Done Right. AVQ, I think I got to you already. And Christine, I think I got to you already as ready. A. Armstrong, Waikisha Ho. Who else am I missing? Wow, Paul Fleming. Let's see. Dimitri OG, ¿cómo estás, mi hermano? Wesley Wayne. Let's see. And I think if I missed you, forgive me or throw another message in. Indiana Bones. I love that name. Indiana Bones. I wonder how many minds you think you changed with this behavior, Mike. Mike is not trying to change behavior. Mike is just trying to change me. I'm trying to change Mike. Mike is going to change. I love Mike. I love Mike. I love my other conservative in here. Where's my brother? Jim? Is it Jim? Where's Jim? You mean Jim abandoned me today? I know Jim is here somewhere because I thought I saw a message that Lee Grant. Lee Grant, that's who I mean. Lee Grant. No, Lee, I am not a Marxist. I know you'd like me to cop to that, but I don't have to cop to that, sir. Anyhow, folks, we're coming close to the end of the show, and this is the point where I look at you and I say, folks, we need your support. So please, you can become a subscriber. We give you all kind of perks for becoming a subscriber. The first part of subscribing is becoming a Patreon. A Patreon by simply going this way, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. That is one way to become a subscriber. You can also become subscribe to the program or support the program by going to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. I just added that to the screen as well. And you can become a member on Facebook. I need Facebook members now because Facebook just gave us the option to take memberships on Facebook. I think we got 3 or 4. We need more. So please, I'd like to get that up to 100 if you guys have the wherewithal to. But that is at politicsdoneright.com/Facebook. It's a link alias to it. And of course, we'd like you to shop at our store. How do you shop at our store? You go to politicsdoneright.com/store. politicsdoneright.com. And what do you get at our store? You can actually get my book. As I see it, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. And of you guys who know I've had weight problems, hey, I found the solution that works for me, and I'm sure you'll find a solution that works for you using this kind of concepts that I use on my own. And of course, you can get our cup, Politics Done Right, t-shirts, all that good stuff right out there. So please, I would appreciate your support by going to one of those links and becoming members. We have all kind of perks, live shows for you that nobody else sees, just because we have to do something for those special folk that says, yeah, I want to help progressive media move forward. I am going to make sure it moves forward. Robert Jansen says, most of all politicians are bought and paid for. They keep us divided so we can focus. Yeah, and people ask, why do you not ban people from your show? Why do you not ban them? You know why I don't ban them? I don't ban them because my goal in this is not for me as, you hurt my feeling. Let me tell you something, guys. There is nothing anyone in my here can tell me that will make me sad, make me feel bad or anything. When I tell you I love you all and I want to make the real change, I honestly mean that. For me to hate any one of you guys that are displaying hate towards me would defy everything I believe in coming from the plutocracy. As you see, Robby Caban, is it Robby who said? No, it's Robert Johnson who just said, most of all politicians are bought on paper. They keep us divided so we focus on BS issues instead of their corruption. You've got the message of the day, Robert Johnson. Because that is how it works. I want to add a corollary to that, sir. With all due respect, I want to add politicians driven by the plutocracy. Politicians driven by the oligarchy. Politicians driven by the powers that control this country. They keep us divided by race, by ethnicity, by class, by gender. They make all these things out there. And the idea behind this is to make sure that if we are fighting among each other, if Masticator and I am fighting, and Masticator, I ain't fighting you, brother. I love you, brother. If Masticator and I are fighting, Masticator don't have time to look at those people that are really screwing him. So that's what it's all about. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out! I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.